Hey everybody, welcome back, Moby Dick. Chapter 20, All a Star. Don't forget, by the way, if you really want to, you could use my Buy Me a Coffee link to pay for my coffee, which should be arriving any moment, I hope. And don't forget to subscribe to me as well. Tap onto my little face down there, somewhere down there, and you'll follow me. Right, Chapter 20, All a Star. A day or two passed, and there was great activity aboard the Pequod. Not only were the old sails being mended, but new sails were coming on board, and bolts of canvas and coils of rigging. In short, everything betokened that the ship's preparations were hurrying to a close. Captain Peleg seldom or never went ashore, but sat in his wigwam, keeping a sharp lookout upon the hands. Bildad did all the purchasing and provided all the stores, and the men employed in the hold on the rigging were working till long after nightfall. On the day following Kikig's signing articles, word was given at all the inns where the ship's company were stopping that their chests must be on board before night, for there was no telling how soon the vessel might be sailing. So Kikig and I got down our traps, resolving, however, to sleep ashore till the last. But it seems they always gave very long notice in these cases, and the ship did not sail for several days. But no wonder. There was a good deal to be done, and there is no telling how many things to be thought of before the Pequod was fully equipped. Everyone knows what a multitude of things, beds, saucepans, knives and forks, shovels and tongs, napkins, nutcrackers, and whatnot, are indispensable to the business of housekeeping. Just so with whaling, which necessitates a 3 years' housekeeping upon the wide ocean, far from all grocers, costermongers, doctors, bakers, and bankers. And though this holds true of merchant vessels, yet not by any means to the same extent as the whalemen. For besides the great length of the whaling voyage, the numerous articles peculiar to the prosecution of the fishery, and the impossibility of replacing them at the remote harbours usually frequented, it must be remembered that of all ships the whaling vessels are the most exposed to accidents of all kinds. The success, and especially the destruction and loss of the very things upon which the success of the voyage most depends. Hence the spare boats, spare spars, and spare lines and harpoons, and spare everything's almost, but a spare captain and duplicate ship. And at the period of our arrival on the island, the heaviest storage of the Pequod had been almost completed, comprising her beef, bread, water, fuel, and iron hoops and staves. But as before hinted, for some time was a continual fetching and carrying on board of diverse odds and ends of things, both large and small. Diverse, D-I-V-E-R-S, it's spelled. Chief among those who did this fetching and carrying was Captain Bildad's sister, a lean old lady of a most determined and indefatigable spirit, but withal very kind-hearted, who seemed resolved that, if she could help it, nothing should be found wanting in the Pequod, after once fairly getting to sea. At one time she would come on board with a jar of pickles for the steward's pantry, another time with a bunch of quills for the chief's mate's desk, where he kept his log, a third with a roll of flannel for the small one of one's rheumatic back. Thank you very much. Back. Oh, where was I? Never did any woman better deserve her name, which was Charity, Aunt Charity, as everybody called her, and like a sister of Charity did this charitable Aunt Charity bustle about hither and thither, ready to turn her hand and heart to anything that promised to yield safety, comfort, and consolation to all on board ship, in which her beloved brother Bildad was concerned, and in which she herself owed a score or two of well-saved dollars. Cappuccino. Hot and nice. Tell me what I like about this cappuccino is the saucer. Like, the saucer is not centered. Isn't that quite good? Can you see? So there's space on it for a spoon. Cup does it quite fit? I think it just about does, but I like that. But it was startling to see this excellent-hearted Quakeress coming on board, as she did the last day, with a long oil ladle in one hand and a still longer whaling lance in the other. Nor was Bildad himself nor Captain Peleg at all backward. As for Bildad, he carried about with him a long list of articles needed, and at every fresh arrival went down his mark opposite that article upon the paper. Every once in a while, that's interesting, once and a while. Every once in a while, Peleg came hobbling out of his whalebone den, roaring at the men down the hatchways, roaring up to the riggers of the masthead, and then concluding by roaring back into his wigwam. During these days of preparation, Kiki and I often visited the craft, and as often I asked about Captain Ahab, and how he was, and when he was going to come on board his ship. To those questions they would answer that he was getting better and better, that he was expected aboard every day. Meantime, the two captains, Peleg and Bildad, could attend to everything necessary to fit the vessel for the voyage. If I had been downright honest with myself, I would have seen very plainly in my heart that I did but half fancy being committed to this way to so long a voyage, without once laying my eyes on the man who was to be the absolute dictator of it. So as soon as the ship sailed out into the open sea. But when a man suspects any wrong, it sometimes happens that if he had be already involved in the matter, he insensibly strives to cover up suspicions even from himself. And much this way it was with me. I said nothing, and tried to think nothing. At last it was given out some time the next day the ship would certainly sail, so the next morning Kikeg and I took a very early start. End of chapter. All hustle and bustle, eh? Must be quite a thing to be away at sea for 3 years. Imagine being stuck with, 40 sailors or so, just you and them, and not sure I would like that. Yeah, and having to visit ports you've never heard of and never been to. Chapter 21. Going abroad. Sorry, going aboard, I should say. I was still thinking of going to other ports. Going aboard. It was nearly 6 o'clock, but only grey imperfect misty dawn when we drew nigh the wharf. There are still some sailors running ahead. There are still sailors running ahead there, if I see right, I said to Kikeg. It can't be shallow. She's off by sunrise, I guess. Come on. Avast! Cried a voice whose owner, at the same time coming close behind us, laid a hand upon both our shoulders, and then, insinuating himself between us, stood stooping forward a little, in the uncertain twilight, strangely peering from Kikeg to I. It was Elijah. Going aboard? Hands off, will you? Said I. Looky here, said Kikeg, shaking himself. Go away. Ain't going aboard then. Yes, we are, said I. But what business is that of yours? Do you know, Mr. Elijah, that I consider you a little impertinent? No, I wasn't aware of that, said Elijah, slowly and wonderingly looking from me to Kikeg with the most unaccountable glances. Elijah, said I, you will oblige my friend and me by withdrawing. We are going to the Indian and Pacific Oceans, and would prefer not to be detained. Ye be. Coming back before breakfast? He's cracked, Kikeg, said I. Come on. Holloa, cried the stationary Elijah, hailing us when we had removed a few paces. Never mind him, said I. Kikeg, come on. But he stole up to us again, and suddenly clapping his hand on my shoulder, said, Did ye see anything looking like men going towards that ship a while ago? Struck by this plain matter-of-fact question, I answered, saying, Yes, I thought I did see 4 or 5 men, but it's too dim to be sure. Very dim, said Elijah. Morning to ye. Once more we quitted him, but once more he came softly after us, and touching my shoulder again said, See if ye can find un now, will ye? Find who? Morning to ye, he rejoined, again moving off. Oh, I was going to warn ye against, but never mind. It's all one, all in the family too. Sharp frost this morning, ain't it? Goodbye to ye. Shan't see you again very soon, I guess, unless it's before the grand jury. And with these cracked words he finally departed, leaving me for the moment in no small wonderment at his frantic impudence. I like Elijah. I'd quite like to be like Elijah when I'm old and grey and wizened and stooped over. That'd be quite good fun. At last, stepping on board the Pequod, we found everything in profound quiet, not a soul moving. The cabin entrance was locked within, the hatches were all on, and lumbered with coils of rigging. Going forward to the forecastle, that actually says forecastle, but I'm going to say forecastle, we find the slide of the old scuttle open. Seeing a light, we went down and found only an old rigger there, wrapped in a tattered pea-jacket. He was thrown at whole length upon two chests, his face downwards, and enclosed in his folded arms. The profoundest slumber slept upon him. "Those sailors we saw, Kiki, where can they have got to?" said I, looking dubiously at the sleeper. But it seemed that, when on the wharf, Kiki had not at all noticed what I now alluded to. Hence I would have thought myself to have been optically deceived in that matter, were it not for Elijah's otherwise inexplicable question. But I beat the thing down, and again marking the sleeper, jocularly hinted to Kiki that perhaps we had best sit up with the body, telling him to establish himself accordingly. He put his hand upon the sleeper's rear, as though feeling if it was soft enough, and then, without more ado, sat quietly down there. "Gracious, Kiki, don't sit there," said I. "Oh, very dude seat," said Kiki. "My country way won't hurt him face." "Face," said I. "Call that his face? Very benevolent countenance, then. But how hard he breathes. He's leaving himself off. Get off. Sorry, he's heaving himself off. Get off. Kiki, you are heavy. It's grinding the face of the poor. Get off, Kiki. Look, he'll twitch you off soon. I wonder if he don't wake." Kiki removed himself to just beyond the head of the sleeper, and lighted his tomahawk pipe. I sat at the feet. We kept the pipe passing over the sleeper from one to the other. Meanwhile, upon questioning him in his broken fashion, Kiki gave me to understand that in his land, owing to the absence of settees and sofas of all sorts, the king, chiefs, and great people generally were in the custom of fattening some of the lower orders for ottomans, and to furnish a house comfortably in that respect. You had only to buy up 8 to 10 lazy fellows and then lie them around on the piers and alcoves. Besides, it was very convenient on an excursion, much better than those garden chairs which are convertible into walking sticks. Upon occasion, a chief calling his attendant and desiring him to make a settee of himself under a spreading tree, perhaps in some damp marshy place. While narrating these things, every time Kiki received the tomahawk from me, he flourished the hatchet side of it over the sleeper's head. "What's that for, Kiki?" "Oh, very easy, Killy, oh, very easy." He was going on with some wild reminiscences about his tomahawk pipe, which, it seemed, had in its two uses both brained his foes and soothed his soul, when we were directly attracted to the sleeping rigger. The strong vapour now completely filling the contracted hole, it began to tell upon him. He breathed with a sort of muffledness, then seemed troubled in the nose, then revolved over once or twice, then sat up and rubbed his eye. "Holloa," he breathed at last. "Who be ye, smokers?" Sorry, I'll do it in a pirate accent. "Holloa," he breathed at last. "Who be ye, smokers?" "Shipped men," answered I. "When does she sail?" Aye, you're going in her by ye. She sails today. The captain came aboard last night." "What, Captain Ahab?" "Who but him, indeed." I was going to ask him some further questions concerning Ahab when we heard a noise on the deck. "Holloa, Starbucks, sir," said the rigger. "He's a lively chief." I think Starbuck is Ahab, isn't he? It's chief mate. "He's a lively chief mate, that good man, with a pious but all alive now, I must turn to." And so saying, he went on deck and soon followed. It was now clear sunrise. Soon the crew came on board in twos and threes. The riggers bestirred themselves. The mates were actively engaged, and several of the shore people were busy in bringing various last things on board. Meanwhile, Captain Ahab remained invisibly enshrined within his cabin. End of chapter. Okay, well, we've got 4 pages of the next chapter. Shall we read it? Shall we? Tell me what, I'll pause here momentarily. Pause, and then I think I'll read the next one. So I'll have those two last chapters, 20 and 21, and then we'll go on to chapter 22. I'll record it now, but I'll have a break here. So thank you for watching. Like I said at the start, make sure you tap onto my face down there, and then tap onto the bell to get notifications when I go live. And I'll see you for chapter 22. Merry Christmas in a moment. Bye bye.